Hello, everybody, and welcome back to From BA to Broadway. You know who it is. It's me, it's Brennan, and I'm here, like I am all the time. Folks, general programming reminders. We are here every Monday with the main episode, every Wednesday with our mini-series In the Spotlight. And next weekend, folks, you can catch us live at Broadway Con. That's going to be next Friday, July 26th. You'll be able to come see us record a podcast live. You can catch us at our own panel at 10 a.m., and it's going to be an absolute blast. So come through. Might have some little goodies for you. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. But yeah, I'm pumped, and I can't wait to meet y'all and see you there. And now, on to the main event. Folks, today I am joined by Miss Caitlin McNeilage. That's how you pronounce your last name?
You nailed it.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's it.
Caitlin, what's going on?
Oh my gosh, not much. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the pod. I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Caitlin, who are you and what the heck do you do?
That's such a great question. I would like to know the answer to myself. Just kidding. I am a producer and actor in New York City.
Amazing.
I am the owner of the production company Leading Lady Creative, and then also the associate producer for Broadway producer Brian Spector at Kiaka Productions.
Hell yeah.
So busy, tired, but,
That's the
living
New York
the dream.
way, baby. How do we know each other?
Through our friend Danny. From college. Danny from school.
Danny from college.
My good pal Danny, and now you guys are roomies.
Yes, we're roomies.
But you guys go way back, right?
No, not really.
Do you guys also know each other from college?
I only met Danny like a year and a half ago.
Wait, really?
Through Brandon. Yes. I met Brandon on a gig.
Okay.
And then I came back here and I met him through him. Yeah.
Wow. For some reason I thought you guys were like old friends.
No.
Okay.
Just kindred spirits, as they say. Yeah.
Totally. I love that.
I mean, me too. Caitlin, did you go to school for theater?
Oh, I did go to school for theater. I went to NYU Tisch.
Amazing.
And I did my first 2 years in the Playwrights Horizons Theater School program, and then my last 2 years in the New Studio on Broadway musical theater program, which is where I met Danny.
Oh, so, nice. Did you study producing in college?
Not at all. I didn't even know what it was back then.
Amazing.
I really wish I had. I think there was like one producing elective you could take.
Okay.
And I think I even heard that was a thing, and I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a producer.
Why would I need to know that?
Yeah, I think that's just about money. I don't care about that. I'm not going to do that. And I really wish I had taken it now, because it probably would have saved me some time learning as I go.
That's how it goes. It's all a part of it. How did you find your way into this world?
It was all sort of a big accident.
Amazing.
As sometimes these things tend to go. We graduated from college, and right after graduating, I went to do a show at San Francisco Shakespeare Festival. I was doing A Midsummer Night's Dream, understudying Helena. And then after that contract ended, that was like immediately after graduating. So I had sort of put all my stuff in storage in New York. I didn't have an apartment. I left, went to do that for 4 months, and then was going to come back to New York. And I was like, oh, well, I'll go home and visit my family for a week before I go back to New York and get an apartment and hit the ground running. I actually, I was going to move into Danny's room in his old apartment.
Yeah.
The famous, friend's apartment, basically. So I was getting ready to come back to New York. I went home for a quick visit. I'm from Florida. And while I was home, a Category 5 hurricane hit my hometown.
Oh my God.
And it was just horrible. It was complete and total devastation. We evacuated for the actual hurricane, so I wasn't there when that actually happened, but I extended my trip so I could help my family and, came back to town a couple of days after the hurricane and just tried to help my mom, go through the contents of our house and so it was just terrible. And I felt really guilty just going back to New York, where I had power and running water and normal life, and everything was...
Of course.
I just had this, not survivor's guilt, but I guess I just had this guilt of, having a place to go back to and, go back to normal life, and just sort of leaving everyone there to, pick up the pieces. And obviously I didn't know anything about how to help, recovery efforts or housing needs, or, I didn't know anything about any of that. And I thought, what can I do to help? the one thing I do know is like Broadway and musical theater. So I pretty much called in every favor I had ever had at the ripe age of 21 or whatever I was, 22 maybe, and put together a concert at 54 Below and had, I think, like 12 or 14 Broadway performers, and we all, came together and did a concert to raise money for my hometown.
Amazing.
And after the concert, one of my friends from NYU who had come to see it pulled me aside and was like, "I think this is what you're meant to do."
Whoa.
And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Producing." I said, "Oh, no, I don't know what producing is." And he was like, "That's what you just did."
Yeah.
Like pulling this whole thing together and, making the set list and scheduling everything and all of that. Like that's producing. And I truly, silly me, did not even know that it was what I had been doing for the past few months.
But of course. Because what is producing?
What is producing? Great question. I get asked this all the time. And I still don't have I should really work on a little soundbite go-to answer. But I think what I always say is it's hard to give a short, easy answer because it's so different producer to producer. And it's so different based on the production. And it's really, really different if you're talking about film and TV or if you're talking about theater or, different sort of mediums. But I would say the short answer is a producer is just the person who's in charge of the whole thing from the top down. So, obviously financing and raising the money is often a big job of a producer if they're the lead producer of something. But also, hiring everyone, getting the team together, making all the major decisions. There's some producers that consider themselves more, creative producers as well as being sort of in charge. And so they help make a lot of the creative decisions and they help sort of develop the piece. And that's definitely the type of producer I am more interested in being because obviously I went to school for theater. I love it. I love storytelling. I feel like I can bring creative ideas to the table as opposed to just being the person who sends the emails and books the theater and makes things happen.
For sure.
But really that is what it boils down to is what a producer does. It's just the person who makes it all happen.
Yeah.
And the one who sort of makes all the big decisions and approves everything from the top. So that's more or less what a producer does.
Heard. So when a production is getting started, let's say there is a production coming to Broadway, what involvement has there already been from the producer by the time that announcement is made?
A lot. Yeah. So I'm actually just starting to learn this firsthand for the first time because my boss who I work with, the Broadway producer I work with, is making his Broadway lead producing debut this fall.
Wow.
So, he's been a co-producer on many Broadway shows and he has been a lead producer on many sort of new works that are still in development, but this is his first time lead producing on Broadway. So I am lucky enough to get to be in a lot of those meetings and on a lot of those email threads. And before the show was even announced, it was fundraising had begun,
Gotcha.
a lot of marketing meetings. And, of course, you have to even just prepping the press release that's going to go out to make the announcement that it's coming to Broadway. I think a lot of, granted, this is a transfer. It's the Hills of California coming over from the West End. So, when that happens, it's a little different than a brand new show but, casting discussions had already started and, creative work with the director and the writer and it's usually not just one lead producer if you're talking about a massive Broadway show.
Yes.
It's usually a group of 3, 4, 5 lead producers. And so they all kind of have to get together and agree on all of these decisions. They all have to sort of go back and forth on each teeny tiny little decision that has to be made. Yep. Marketing, press releases, social media announcements, anything that happens, they are all coming together to give feedback and to sort of go back and forth amongst themselves to then sort of put together the feedback to give the marketing company or the press team or the whoever it is. So it's a lot of work. I mean, obviously things like securing a theater, those discussions happen way far in advance. And, that's a big decision-making process of which theater is going to be the right fit. And of course, which theaters have an opening and which theaters will, say yes. And so it just, it all starts very, very far in advance.
That's a lot. That's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Is it, I mean, I feel like it's probably varying from production to production, but is it a situation where a producer is yes, I found this show, I want to bring it to this place? Or is it hey, I have this show, would you like to produce it kind of thing? What is like the hatching of the egg and that kind
Yeah.
of respect?
Yeah, it is very chicken or the egg because it can go either way.
Okay.
So yeah, it can often be something where Suff sits on Broadway right
Yeah.
now. That was something that Rachel Sussman sort of had the idea for, had the concept for, and then, went to Shayna Taub and was like, will you write this? Will you help me develop this? So that is something that can definitely happen. One of my first major projects that I lead produced happened the same way. I had an idea and a concept, and I took it to my friend and playwright, Sarah Hogwood.
Shout out to Sarah.
Shout out to Sarah. And, I'm not a writer, so I had sort of a general concept and outline and idea, but I was like, would you please write this for me? And then now I'm producing one of her shows that she has written. We're taking it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and that was kind of,
hell yeah,
the opposite, where like she already had this thing and I was like, of course I'll produce it, let's do it.
Yeah.
So it really can be either way. And like, for something like Broadway, a lot of times maybe there's one lead producer attached in the beginning, maybe they have a relationship with the playwright, and then they sort of reach out to other people to like bring them in as partners, as fellow lead producers. So it really just sort of depends on the project and the relationship between the producer and the playwright. There are some, producers and writers who've been every project they do. It's like, you look at the Hal Princes of the world and the Stephen Sondheims and the Andrew Lloyd Webbers and Cameron McIntosh. Sometimes there's just like a team that comes together and they just produce or write all of each other's projects for the most part. And then sometimes it can really be on a case-by-case basis.
For sure. What is the advantage, or like why would a lead producer be bringing on more producers?
I mean, oftentimes it's just to help bear the burden of raising money.
Gotcha.
A lot of it, I always joke, I wish theater was free to make and to enjoy.
Oh, for sure.
Because that is by far my least favorite part about producing. I wish I could just do all the like logistical decision making, creative, all that, and not have to ever worry about money ever again in my life. But yes, often it is just to sort of share like, okay, if we have, let's say, a $10 million capitalization for a Broadway play, maybe, maybe you want to, instead of just having to either raise that all on your own or raise it with just one other lead producer, maybe you want to bring in and have like 5 lead producers. So each of you only have $2 million to raise, more or less.
That's crazy.
I know. And then of course you're raising that with co-producers. So it's like, it all gets kind of split up, and then the co-producers have investors, so it's all kind of like this little like family tree of fundraising.
How does the co-producer lead producer relationship function?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think again it like depends on the producer and like how they like to do things, but I know my boss is really great about like sending pretty regular email updates to all of his co-producers and like really keeping them in the loop. And on most like Broadway productions, there will be co-producer meetings where they get to come in and like maybe not necessarily make the decisions, because ultimately that is always going to be up to the lead producers, but they definitely are able to come into those meetings and like give their opinions and sort of give feedback on certain decisions or certain certain facets of the production that need to be discussed and decided upon. And they do, of course.
Sounds like a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
It is. But, I guess there's like a hierarchy for a reason in a way.
Valid.
So that it's like, of course their input is like listened to and encouraged and, taken very seriously. But it's also all at the end of the day, like up to the group of lead producers. So it's all just, I think the structure is there to make sure that no one's having to put up like millions and millions of dollars of their own money on a Broadway show, or even having to like find it all on their own. It's sort of meant to like bear the burden. But the more people you bring on to bear the financial burden, the more cooks in the kitchen, as you say. So even amongst lead producers, it's like, okay, well, if you have 5 lead producers instead of just 2, that's obviously going to bring a different dynamic. And, you're getting lots of ideas, which is great, but you're also all having to like come together and agree on something in order to move forward. So it can be tricky at times.
I guess my curiosity is then, how do the producers relate to the directors in terms of, the execution of vision and art and all of that stuff. Also, are producers involved in the casting of these things?
Yeah, so often, yes. But then I hate to just keep saying it
I mean,
depends,
listen,
but
of course, it's always
there are some producers who are like, I'm here to raise the money and I'm gonna hire the director I think is the best choice for this, and sort of put the best team in place, and then I'm gonna sort of back out and say, you guys make the creative decisions. Of course, I'll sign off on it, but you know what you're doing as far as creative choices more than I do, so they will take more of a back seat and just sort of like, say, I trust you.
for sure.
And then there are some producers that I think are really heavily involved in those things. So yeah, and I know the way my boss does things is like he'll really let the writers and the music director and folks like that, and the director, of course, weigh in heavily, and he'll give his opinion too, but it's really kind of a group effort between the producer and the lead creatives, which I think is a great way to do it, because I think
For sure.
even being a creative producer and knowing a lot about the art and the creative process, I think that's great, but I think it's also nice to know when to sort of step in and when to sort of step back and trust the team that you've put together.
For sure.
So I do think it depends producer to producer, but I think that's sort of the ideal marrying of those things, is to be very heavily involved, definitely be very informed and be around during the whole process of casting and things like that, but to sort of know when to let the director and the writers and the creatives do what they do best.
That feels right. That feels like how I would like for that to kind of settle in my heart and brain when I'm thinking about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot to throw into that kind of that box. But this, I mean, that's, I guess, also on a bigger scale. I mean, it's always going to be different, obviously. I got to keep on remembering that. As you get down to quote unquote, smaller projects, once you start going off Broadway or regional or whatnot, I would assume there would be less producers and less to navigate in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sometimes I think. I mean, for my projects that I have lead produced on, obviously a much smaller level than Broadway, I have one co-lead producer that I work with, Tanya Gupta, who's amazing. But yeah, I would say it's definitely more rare once you get into the smaller markets and things, and you're having lower capitalizations for shows that are off Broadway or whatnot. You usually will only have one or two lead producers for the most part.
Heard.
Off-Broadway, sadly, is also just becoming a really difficult financial model. So I think it's a lot of young people trying something out for the first time. And there are some great theaters that are really supportive of young artists and try to help it be more financially viable for them, which I think is really great. But I think a lot of those quote-unquote big producers, which I hate to say it like that, but I feel like a lot of them are kind of scared away from off-Broadway right now. So I feel like it's a lot of young up-and-coming people in that area at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this when we talked about the different kinds of quote-unquote theater, the different, once again, quote-unquote tiers of it, and off-Broadway really gets a bad rap for no reason.
Yeah.
Really, it's literally a category that was built upon the size of the house.
Totally. Yeah.
So, I mean, I do feel we often see those newer, more cutting edge works in the off-Broadway spaces because people aren't so keen to take a risk, a quote unquote risk on something like that,
Definitely.
Which is a shame, but it is nice that we then get those opportunities going to the new blood, essentially.
Right.
And being able to kind of produce their art and support it in that way, it's nice, but once again, it feels very political, it feels very
welcome to theater.
Yeah, no, truly. And it kind of makes sense, it makes sense in anything with a hierarchical structure in some way or another, but boy, does that stink.
I know,
it's tough.
I wish we could all just make art and just not worry.
That doesn't feel too much to ask.
I know.
Come on, people. God.
Like I said, it should all just be free. It should all just be free and easy.
And I don't know. It's not. It's
It's
not even
not.
close. You
No,
know, it's
unfortunately.
definitely not free. It is
No.
definitely not easy.
No.
Someday, maybe someday,
Maybe.
in a
Yeah.
different country somewhere. You know,
I've heard tell.
literally.
Yeah.
I mean, awesome that you're going to the Fringe and stuff too. That's amazing. You went last year, correct?
Yeah, I
Okay,
went the last 2 years, but
amazing.
last year was the first time I was like lead producing a show. The
Heard.
year before that, I went to co-produce a new musical and sort of get the lay of the land a
Hmm.
little bit. So yeah, it's been my third year in a row. It's like talk about a place where you kind of can just create things for
Yeah,
not very little. It is very expensive as like US folks to like go over there
for sure.
and do a show, but the actual like theater rentals themselves are not that expensive, and you will see, you know, of course you see the massive like West End
Yes.
producers put up these huge musicals in an actual theater with costumes and sets and
Hmm.
lighting and like all this crazy stuff. But then you also will go to like the back room of a bar
Yeah.
or that has, you know, five stools in it and see someone's like one
Yeah.
woman show that has no set or props
That's
or
exactly
like,
right.
you know, it's sort of and everything in between.
Yeah,
But I would say the majority of shows at the Fringe are more on the lower scale
for sure.
end of things, where it's just people like in a random room in Edinburgh, some of which are
Totally.
definitely not theaters but have been sort
Oh,
of like
100%.
converted into a makeshift theater for
Hmm.
the Fringe, and like people are just like making a show and
Yeah.
like doing a thing and sort of bootstrapping, and like it sounds really cheesy, but I always tell people it feels like the place you go if you want to like be reminded why we all started
Yes.
doing this in the first place and like
Absolutely.
what it's all for and what it's all about. And sometimes it all just gets a little like we get a little lost in the sauce of it all.
For
And
sure.
like Broadway, and like of course Broadway is, you know, I'm not trying to talk about Broadway, but
It's different. Like
it's
it is.
just
It's different.
And like, you know, commercial theater is a wonderful thing. I'm like obviously working in that world. I'm not dissing it, but I do think it's great to like sometimes like sort of strip it all back and
Mhm.
like strip it all away and just have the art and
Just
like
enjoy the art.
the
Yeah.
the concept of just like play and making something out of nothing. And
Exactly.
I think that's like exactly what the Fringe is all about. And
Mhm.
it is, I tell everyone, I know it's expensive to travel over there, but like you have to go
Yeah.
at least once in your life if you're an artist.
You're not gonna see. The thing is, you're not gonna go once, because once you go once, you're like, okay,
yeah, I do have to say you will
need to
get
be
the
back there.
bug
Yeah, yeah.
and be like me and be a crazy person who, in the midst of all the trying to figure out how I'm going to get us all over there, I'm like so stressed and like having a
Of
nervous
course.
breakdown. And I'm like, I will never do this again. And then it's like we're there, and I'm like, okay,
You're
how
like,
do we come back
okay,
next year?
this is the most
Do
magical thing I've
we
ever
have-
experienced.
Yep. I'm like, ooh, where can I find a show to bring back next year?
It's also like once you experience that reset too, it's like, okay, now I know where that reset button is.
Yeah.
And it is an expensive one. But yeah, I just
Yes.
found, I stumbled across my journal the other day of when I did a 2-week study abroad program for the Fringe,
Oh my gosh, amazing.
which was really just us going to the Fringe.
Yeah.
We were just there for 2 weeks.
Wait, that's so
um,
cool.
And they
Wait,
like,
what school? Where did you go again?
I went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst. So it was the
Oh, okay, I have a
UMass
friend who went there.
theater department. Who?
Gabe Benson.
Okay, no,
Was her-
not my time.
Her pre-married name.
Understood. Yeah.
Okay.
Probably before or after my time.
Maybe.
But
yeah, and definitely not in theater.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I
then,
didn't even specify that.
yeah. Then no,
We just like we're high school friends.
too many people there.
Yeah.
Never.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, so we did a 2-week study abroad program there where we just went and they got us tickets to X amount of shows, and the like work of it would be we saw those specific shows and then we would just go talk about it at a pub afterwards. I
Sounds
was
like
just
a
like
dream.
drinking with my professors.
Oh my gosh, what a
Um,
cool program.
It was awesome. It's really freaking amazing. But yeah, those were the most magical 2 weeks of my life, like
Yeah.
ever. And like it's just that feeling that when you need that reset that you yearn for, and I'm like, oh, I need to go back, and I need to go back soon.
Yeah.
But it is expensive for sure.
It is, but also like Edinburgh is just like the most magical place ever.
Yeah.
Like
And like
I love it so much.
it is, I think, having done it, I'm like, okay, I know how to make my budget for this, because like I saw in the course of 2 weeks, I saw over 40 shows.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I'm like,
Highly possible.
exactly. There's tons of free ones. There's I mean,
Mhm.
for the most part, $10 or under.
Yeah.
But it was the thing where like a lot of the shows that they got us tickets to see were the big, legit ones, yada, yada, yada. But the ones that I enjoyed the most are the ones that I literally stumbled upon
Yeah,
exiting another show or like, I don't know, getting a flyer for, or literally word of mouth. Like that's just how it goes over there. And it was, I don't know, I experienced some of the best shows I've ever seen in my life over there.
totally.
And how is that in terms of like producing from so far away? Like securing all the spaces, doing all this stuff,
Yeah.
and like vouching for yourself across the globe.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I got really lucky because I not stumbled in. I'm really good at like cold pitching myself to
Of
people
course.
and just being like, what if I worked on this show with you? So a producer from New York that I had worked with on a couple projects previously, I ran into her one night after seeing a show. And she was like at this they used to do this like musical theater karaoke thing at
Love.
Bar 9 on Ninth
Of
Avenue.
course.
During the height of COVID, but this was not during the height of COVID. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The
All
point
good.
was I ran into her. I had a total of like 2 drinks on a Tuesday night. And I heard her
Liquid
say,
courage.
exactly. I heard her say on stage, like, here's a song from a musical I'm writing that I'm taking to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival later this year. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like I said, you know, we knew each other. We had worked together on a couple things. So it wasn't completely random. But I fully was like, okay, 2 drinks on a Tuesday night. This means I'm just going to walk right up to her and be like, hey, do you need a co-producer?
There you go.
And next thing I know, I'm like going to Edinburgh. So I sort of a little bit stumbled into all of that. Obviously worked hard and helped with the show, but she had already like booked a theater, like had a space, had a lot of the like, where do you even start from scratch stuff taken care of when I came on. And then because I was part of that show, I got to know the people at the venue where we did that show. And so I just, it was, I hate to say easy. I would love to be like, yeah, I worked really hard.
Any easy thing we can
It was
get.
really hard. I'm so awesome for securing a theater. But I just like reached out to them about, you know, going last year because I already had that relationship with them. And so I didn't have to really start from scratch as far as like what theater do you go to? How do you get in with them? Like how do you, like you said, like sort of pitch yourself from so far away? I just sort of leapt into that. And this will be my 3rd year in a row with that same, like with Greenside venues. So that just sort of came naturally. But I will say one thing about the Fringe, I feel like people hear it and it's such a big deal and it's such a famous thing. It's the 3rd largest attended ticketed event in the world after only the Olympics and the World Cup.
Crazy.
So like it is this big deal. It is like a somewhat prestigious thing, but then it's also not, like we just talked about. It's like back rooms and like whatever. But I think people think it's like so hard to like get in.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the Fringe, like the reason it started whenever it was, back in the, you know, kind of early-ish 1900s, I think. I don't know. I probably just threw that number out of nowhere. Someone fact check that and
I believe it.
maybe cut it out. But back when it started, the whole point of it was that these artists that started it couldn't get into whatever the like original, like main, like artsy fartsy festival was. So they were like, we're going to start our own thing where everyone is allowed and everyone is welcome. And then we're going to start it like on the fringes. Like that's the whole point. And so I actually think it's a very moderately easy thing to get into. I mean, I think you probably have to do your research. I think you have to reach out to these venues and like try to figure out how to get into one. But more or less, they accept everyone.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really have to like have a Pulitzer Prize winning piece of art to be like, can I get a slot at your theater? Like, you kind of just have to like do some research and like reach out to these venues and like, you know, I'm sure they have people that they always work with. So maybe it's not as easy as I'm making it sound. But more or less, like they kind of let everyone in.
Yeah.
So it's actually like a really beautiful, wonderful thing. And I think
totally.
anyone who's interested should at least like look into it. It is stupid expensive, especially to like stay over there.
Yeah.
That's the biggest expense is like the housing. But I just cannot recommend people look into it enough.
100. I mean, like the thing is, I feel like that's something that sounds daunting enough to then have the imposter syndrome. But listen, once again, I saw 40 shows. Not all of them were winners.
Oh,
let me tell you.
Definitely not.
A lot of them were just a person in a bar doing something where I'm like, okay, cool. But you know what? That person secured that slot. They said, I can do it. And they did. And you know what, folks? That means you can too.
You can too.
Truly.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. What a
I love
magical
it.
time.
I'm the Fringe's biggest fan. Like,
I'm like everyone. I'm like, oh my god, you have to go. It's literally
yeah.
that's probably the most pretentious I ever sound is where I'm like, you have to go to the Fringe. It's life changing.
It's true
It's
though.
reinvigorating as an artist, but like it's all really true. You know,
You gotta go.
100%. What is the name of the other festival that happens? The real prestigious one.
I don't know if it still happens. I would have to like.
It still happened when I was there, which was
Really?
2016, no, it was 2018. Basically what happened was there's this prestigious festival, and then the Fringe started because of all of the people who couldn't get into that and still wanted to do things. So they started running them in tandem, but then the Fringe got way more popular.
Wait. Oh, okay.
Hit me with it.
Story dates. Okay, I'm just in front of the. Okay. Is it the Edinburgh International Festival?
That's exactly what it is.
Because it says the Fringe is a 3-week festival. Takes place every August. Its story dates back to 1947.
Okay.
So that's the early 1900s.
Pretty much the same, yeah.
I was not too far off earlier.
Yeah.
When 8 theater groups turned up uninvited to perform at the Edinburgh International Festival.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the fancy one, I guess. Wow, I honestly didn't even realize that it still happened, like the original one.
Well, we also...
I thought we dismantled it.
No.
I thought us young, scrappy, poor artists dismantled the bougie festival.
We did in a way because they happened at the same time and like...
And I had to Google the name of that one.
Yeah.
So
the Fringe stuff is like better.
Yeah,
it's way less
obviously.
expensive. I mean, all of that stuff is like $50 to $80, and like it production value is high, great, but like there's a lot. It's like a lot of. I shouldn't hate on this because it was like a very hot top end like dance company that we went to see, but I was not there for it. You know, not fun. Some very just really bad, I will say bad plays that were just incredibly like visually spectacular, but not good pieces of theater.
Sure.
And then I go seeing a little 45-minute show in a bar and it's absolutely life changing, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
wow.
Fuck the international
Yeah,
festival.
come on.
No, we're here for the grit.
We want the gritty one.
Absolutely. But yeah, folks, go find a way. Go for a week.
This has just been an ad for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
And you know what?
We should be sponsored.
If you want to sponsor us, I'd be happy to do a recording at the Fringe.
Ooh, there we go.
Let me know,
do
everybody.
They do like live podcast tapings there?
I'm sure people do anything and everything there.
That is true. Look into that.
My favorite show that I saw there, it was like some Dutch theater company that is known for doing like big productions there, but it was called Lies, and each letter in that title was a different monetary font. Like the S was a dollar symbol, euro symbol, etc. And it was this crazy interactive theater piece where you walk in, they separate your group at different tables, and you're like playing a game. And it seems like really fun until you realize that the game you're playing is actually the politics of the world, and everything you're doing is having an effect on like the stock markets of everything. And by the end, you kind of just plunge everything into chaos. And it was absolutely fascinating, riveting, and just absolutely brilliant, innovative theater in a way that I've never, ever experienced here, you know?
Yeah.
Like the closest I've gotten to it here is 20-Sided Tavern, which I'm a huge fan of. Like,
I've seen that.
Big fan, really refreshing, innovative, interactive kind of theater.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. There was a lot of that over there where I was like, no, you don't get that over here.
Yeah.
Once again, I feel like it is all the shiny capitalism Broadway of it all, which is like, I don't know. It's a shame for sure, but also it just doesn't hold up in this kind of space.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah, I feel like every type of theater like has its own like place and sort of market. Like, you know, I think I obviously love Broadway and like commercial theater, and I think it has its absolute like upsides, and you know, you can like reach so many people that way, and like, you know, people that maybe have never seen a piece of theater in their entire life, like might stumble in to see Hamilton or, you know, Wicked, and maybe have their lives change and then start wanting to see more theater. And, you know, so I do think there's like total upsides to that. I think
for sure
there's total upsides to like off Broadway, and then to the like very gritty, like back, like I just think it all sort of has its place and its purpose.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good, especially as a producer, to know what sort of market and medium is going to serve like the story and the show that you have, because not every show is meant to be a Broadway show.
No.
And some people, I think, in the past few years, even before COVID a little bit, like everyone just wants their show to go to Broadway. So they rush it to Broadway, they put it on Broadway, and then maybe it doesn't last very long. And it's like, look at, Titanic, and look at Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh my God.
And look at Sleep No More. Like, look at these shows that have been hugely successful, not on Broadway, and have run for years and years. And are, I've had people tell me like their favorite show in all of New York is Titanic, or is, is like something that's not on Broadway. And do they have the sort of prestige and like audiences and excitement and buzz around them to probably transfer to Broadway? Probably. Yeah. I'm sure that was a conversation at some point in time. I'm sure that was an offer made at some point in time. Yeah. But the producers of those shows know that they can probably have a better, bigger, longer lasting impact staying exactly where they are, because
that's exactly right.
That is the right size theater, it's the right environment, it's the right area of town or whatever it may be for that type of show. And I think that's like a really important thing for people to know, and for producers to be smart about, because like some shows are Edinburgh Fringe shows. Some shows are Broadway shows. They can maybe be both. I mean, Six started at the Edinburgh Fringe, as did Freestyle Love Supreme. But, it just, I think you have to really know the markets and know where your show is going to be the most successful. And it's not always the one that you're maybe the most excited or the starriest, biggest option.
Not everything is most appropriate in those spaces, I mean, especially like Sleep No More, I think, is probably the most divergent in terms of experience and genre. I haven't seen it. Too spooky for me.
Okay, same. I've always been too afraid to go.
I have no desire. I'm not a no. I'm not a scary boy.
I'm not into like a closet. Like, I cannot sign up for that. I would be too scared.
I respect the art, but I've also heard of the person who gets pulled away and has a solo experience for the whole time. And it's magical. But I'm like, listen, I also don't have the social capacity to do that. Being the only one there, can't do that.
Could not be me.
But
not be me.
Very thrilled with the idea of it. Very happy that it exists and is popular and in the zeitgeist of it all, for sure. And like, I don't know, I would love to just see more of that. I would love to see more of that innovative, using random spaces. I mean, quite frankly, it's not like there's a limit of that in New York,
Very true.
But yeah, I'm like Little Shop of Horrors. Literally has little in the name. It does very well for an intimate space, Not saying that it can't be put in a bigger one, but like there's something so charming about that production right now. I have seen that one.
I actually haven't seen that one either yet, and I need to.
I saw Lena Hall's last performance. Nice. Crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Very different kind of Audrey, but I was there for every second of it. It was sick.
Love that.
Yes, 10 out of 10. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of different cans of worms that you need to open and sort and deal with, and that's your job and not mine. Let me tell you.
Exactly.
What is your dream? What is your dream in terms of producing and all of that?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, I'm not really sorry, but that just felt like a nice thing to say.
I don't know. I think I have so many. I am a huge fan of Reese Witherspoon and Hello Sunshine, her production company. So a big dream of mine is to work with or for them in some way one day, as I'm also a huge fan of Shonda Rhimes and Betsy Beers, her producer. So like, and just like those being really strong, powerful, like female-led companies, I think would be a dream to work with or for. Maybe building up my own company to being like a similar, a similar sort of company as theirs would be really amazing. And then I have lots of like random, well, obviously I want to make like my Broadway producing debut at some point. I would love to like produce a feature film. I mean, like I have 100 million little dreams, or not little, but different, and then I have some really random ones that I have always had since I was little in the back of my mind, and like somewhere in my sick brain, like I'm still convinced I'll take a few years off of like whatever else I'm doing and make this happen.
I can't wait to hear what you're about to say.
One of them is there has never been a female Division I college football head coach. And I'm a huge college football fan.
Oh my God.
And
okay, Sandra Bullock.
yeah, like it's kind of giving that, not hopefully in the like all the backlash ways that have come to light in the past few years. But yes, I'm a huge football fan. I would like to think that like I know a lot of the like rules and plays and positions like probably better than like your average like
that's
armchair
amazing.
Quarterback man.
Mm-hmm.
My father always tells me it's not possible because most coaches are former players, so a woman will never be a coach. But there, I don't remember. This was a couple years ago, so maybe I would have to fact check this if this is still true. But at the time we had this argument a couple years ago, there were 5 Division I head coaches who never played in college. So I was like, okay, well, you need to get a different reason why I can't do it because they're doing it. They're just men. So that's like a random side dream of mine.
And you know what? If anyone's going to weasel their way into that kind of position, it's going to be a Broadway producer.
It feels like a producer thing to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, it just makes sense. I did try to double major in musical theater and sports broadcasting.
And football coaching.
And football coaching, duh. But, like, I did think, like, if this whole, like, theater thing didn't work out, I could be, like, you know, a sports commentator or reporter.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, my mom was a TV news anchor for a while when I was growing up, so I'm sure that's where I got that from. And I was like, I could combine my love of sports, but also, like, TV and performing and talking a lot, clearly. So anyway, those are my sports side dreams. And then I do have a really sick, and this one's, it's sick. I know it's sick, but somewhere in my brain, I am like, well, by the time I hit the age, if there still hasn't been a woman president, maybe I'll just take a few years off and go do that.
Once again, if anyone is going to do it, it is going to be a Broadway producer.
You know, I am now realizing as I'm saying all these out loud, all of these dreams and jobs are very like bossy things. Like I think I just want to boss people around, apparently.
I mean, yes,
I just want to be in charge.
But there's a difference between being a bossy leader and a competent leader. And unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people know that because we haven't had a lot of exposure to that.
It's not true.
Which is that's its own episode. That's its own.
It's true. Yeah.
Whatever.
I do feel like very, very strongly about, I love like being in a leadership position. I think I always have, like since I was a little kid when maybe it was called bossy and not leadership.
Yeah.
But I do feel very, very strongly about like you can be sort of like strong and firm and like a great leader and you know, make great decisions and just sort of like be a great person to have in charge in the room and also be very kind and empathetic and like not soft, but like, you know, have a softer approach as a leader and still be like taken seriously and still like be, you know, a great person to have other people like look to for guidance. And I think that is definitely something we could use in our president of our country. And apparently anyone can just be president.
Yeah.
Like, apparently you don't really have to be a politician or have any qualifications that one might assume you would need in order to do that. So I do actually think somewhere in my brain, I wouldn't have to like take like 20 years off to go like be a politician and like go be a senator or something first. I would just show up and be like, hey guys, I'm a producer.
Listen,
I'm going to run for president.
You're literally working for Softs right now. That's already like already 10 more qualifications than a lot of people have.
There we go. So that's my sick, twisted. But I think I only want to do it if I can be the first. I don't think I have an interest.
I mean,
if I can't be the first one.
You're not you're not about being a follower.
No, I don't need it if it's not going to be like a big deal.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you, Madam President. Can't wait for that. What? 2029.
Thanks for doing
2029.
Wait, that's so soon. Oh my gosh, how old am I? Oh my gosh, am I that old that it's going to be that soon?
No.
That I'll be like
it's
old
just
enough?
5 years. I mean, I just did the math from 4 years.
Oh, because you're
is there an age?
Yeah, there's an age limit to run for president.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh my gosh, come on, where have you been? Not wanting to run for president, I guess.
Damn right.
Not looking into that.
That's way too much pressure.
Isn't it 35?
I don't know.
Oh, I think so.
I just knew there wasn't an end cap. Apparently,
Yeah,
I didn't know there
there's
was
definitely not an end
I
cap.
didn't know there was an entry
That
point.
honestly is arguably more important.
And
like, you know,
no one seems to. Yeah,
No,
I know. We don't need to get into it. I'm so anxious. Wild. I love that. I can't wait for that to happen for you.
Side dreams.
That seems like a good order. Because
Yeah.
also, I think after you are a football coach, that would gain you a big demographic in terms
true.
of
That's
leading
why I win
to
the
the presidency.
South, despite
Truly.
being someone they probably would not agree with
Listen,
on anything else.
If you can coach if you can coach the Dallas Cowboys, you're golden.
Then I'm good.
You're golden.
Yeah.
You know what? There we go. That's a strategy. That's your game plan.
That's the game plan. Honestly, I think it could work out.
I believe in it. It makes sense in my brain.
Thank you. I also really think there are not enough women on like late night television talk shows. Like I would love to be like the next host of the Tonight Show or something.
Amazing.
When Jimmy decides that he's done. So yeah, I think it all kind of makes sense if you don't think about it too hard.
It all feels very reasonable to me.
It all totally makes sense and is reasonable. I think I can totally fit all of that into one lifetime.
Hell yeah.
I clearly have no ambition or motivation in life, and I'm obviously happy to live a very like small.
You know what? Day to day. Take it day to day.
Yeah, I'm just taking it one day at a time.
Yeah.
But if I can get around to all that, that's kind of the plan.
Great. Yeah. You know what? No pressure. You got this.
It's all good.
Anywho, tell me about your production company.
Oh, yes. So my production company is called Leading Lady Creative. Obviously, if you can't tell by the name, I'm very passionate about telling stories by, for, and about women. But of course, very especially interested in like telling stories about women who aren't necessarily don't necessarily have it all together, like very messy, complicated, just three-dimensional women who aren't actual women that you might actually know, and aren't someone's wife or girlfriend or like side character or best friend. So that is sort of the main goal. Not, of course, saying that I would never like produce a show that has something to do with a man. Yeah. No men allowed, at least no. But it's just sort of the root of why I wanted to start a production company. And I started the first way all that started was I started a podcast during COVID, like every other person with a microphone in their bedroom.
Shout out to podcasts.
Shout out to podcasts. And the podcast was called The Leading Lady Club, where I interview women who are sort of leaders in all sorts of different fields.
That's so cool.
Another way I was trying to like combine a lot of interests of mine. I was like, how do I talk about theater and sports and, you know, being president? How do I do all that? And so I was like, I'll just talk to other women who do all those things.
There you go.
So yeah, it's been really great, but I sort of wanted my company to be like based off of that, you know, inspiration and that like origin, if you will. So yeah, that's sort of how it all started. And I think I started the company back in, I should know this, 2022. And yeah, that's what the company that I took our show to the Edinburgh Fringe last year and the one we're taking this year. And then I do like concerts at 54 Below and my podcast and who knows what else, but I'm just getting started. So every time someone is like, will you produce my show? I'm like, totally would love to. Yes, I will put it on the list.
Absolutely.
I just gotta take it.
I'll get back to you in 6 years.
Yeah, it's not easy to like start a company and produce things. So I'm just taking it all one thing at a time.
For sure. Rock and roll. That's amazing.
Thanks. It's a good time.
What else about producing have we not talked about? I feel like,
oh my gosh,
I feel like we nailed it.
I hope. I don't know. Maybe like a real producer will listen to this and be like, he's wrong about everything.
And you know what? If that's the case, reach out to me. I'll decide if I want you on the podcast.
There we go.
But I think it's way more fun this way. So there we go.
Totally.
We'll create real information through misinformation.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, I also think like, you know, I would never pretend to say like I have all the answers about producing this is the correct answer or the correct way to do things. Like I can only speak from my experience and my experience as a producer myself, and then my experience sort of watching, working with, and learning from the producers I've worked with. So it's all just what I know. Definitely not the only way to do it or the quote unquote right answer.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There we go, folks.
That's my disclaimer.
That's the disclaimer. That's producing.
That's producing.
Amazing.
In a nutshell.
Wow. Okay. You know what, folks? If this is something you want to do, go out there and do it. What would you say is the typical pathway? I'm sure there's, once again, so many different ones, but if you had to identify one that is stereotypical or typically happens in terms of becoming a producer, where do you tend to see that?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people who sort of know it's what they want to do from the start, unlike myself, there are like college programs for it. I know Columbia has a really, really great graduate like producing program. And I'm sure there are other, I'm sure like NYU, like I said, they had at least a class. I just didn't take it. But so I think like if people know early enough on that they want to do that, I think, going to school for it if you can is a great route. And then I think a lot of people start out by like assisting someone or
For sure.
Even if you don't know like how to just go get a job at a production office, like start just trying to like network. And in the very beginning, anyone I met who like self-proclaimed was a producer, I would ask if I could buy them coffee, pick their brain for 30 minutes or an hour, my treat wherever they wanted to meet. And I just ask questions. And that got me into like my first couple of shows that I produced was I like met with those people. And like while we were meeting, they were like, you want to come be a line producer on this? You want to come be like a co-producer on this? And I just said yes.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, I think just like meeting as many people as you can and maybe trying to work your way up to like an assistant position at a production office is a great way to do it.
Folks, reach out. We talk about all the time now, never underestimate the power of a cold DM.
I love a cold
just do it.
DM or
throw
email.
it in there. Once again, push comes to shove, they don't answer and you forget about it.
Yeah, totally.
That's how it goes.
Totally.
Yeah. Folks,
I talked so much.
That's what a podcast is. It's just talking.
I know.
It's just talking.
I know. But wow.
Whatever.
Here we are.
Folks, if this is something you want to do, go out there, do it. We are rooting for you. We are your biggest supporters, and you can be our biggest supporters by finding us on Patreon. Folks, that is correct. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/BA2Broadway. General disclaimer, we will not be gatekeeping any vital information on there. That is just for fun, bonus content, silly stories, etc. We also have the perk that our principal tier Patreon subscribers get to choose the shows we talk about during Into the Spotlight on Wednesdays. So if there's a show you're dying to hear us chat about, come through on there, let us know. And yeah, Caitlin, where can folks find you if you want to be found?
Oh my goodness, if I want to be found. Haha. No, I'm kidding. Instagram is a great place. Just at Caitlin McNeilage, or my company is at Leading Lady Creative. And then I also, both of those have websites, CaitlinMcNeilage.com or LeadingLadyCreative.com.
Amazing.
We keep it simple.
Hell yeah. Folks, as always, you can find us on most social media platforms at BA2Broadway. Come follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. If you use Facebook, it's pretty much the same thing as the Instagram content, so don't stress too much about that one. And yeah, maybe I'll get around to using X and Threads one day. But right now it's just little old me doing all that stuff, so no, not right now. Anywho, thank you so much for joining us today, Caitlin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Absolutely. And until next time, folks, bye. From BA to Broadway is created, produced, and edited by Brennan Stefanik, music by Dylan Kaufman, and cover art by Jordan Vongsithi.